I also have a new microphone. Also, in my camping hoodie covered in dog hair. So, Saturday night, working on stuff, mostly this little business thing. But today I want to talk about like what is your business advantage or business idea advantage? Because all the time people want to start a business or they're starting one and they might say, "Oh, I'm super passionate about it," or um, I've got a lot of money sitting around and I want to start something, I want to retire and do something else. And I feel like a lot of people just don't have the advantage that they need to succeed in the market they're about to get into. And that's where I think a lot of trouble comes from. And I've got an email here that I'm going to address. And I'm just pulling up the chat real quick here because I'm not seeing. So I'm testing this new software. I'm not seeing the comments like I want to be. Okay, 11 people are watching. Good, we're good. Just no one's talking yet. Perfect. Let me find the right screen again. Here we go. Okay, we're back. So I met someone at a convention. I actually met their dad, and their dad said, "Hey, could we send you an email? My son is open to business. He's got some questions." And I said, "Yeah, go ahead and do that." I spoke to him once before through an email, I don't know, a year ago or something like that. And I was like, "Well, if you already have my email, you've already made it past the wall of defense. So, go ahead and send me that email." So I'm going to skip some of it a little bit and just get down to some of the details so I can use this business as an example. Because all the time, not all the time, but in the past, a lot of times I've talked about the fish business and businesses I'm in, and it's like I'm super aware of what I do. And I think it's a little bit better to analyze other businesses from time to time so that more people can see that, more people can see more types. I'm hearing myself in the background, so that's what was throwing me off here. All right. So it says first, a little bit about me. I'm 21 years old. I started my business of selling luxury watches, right? Mainly Rolexes. And just over a year ago, it's been going pretty well. So he started a little over a year ago. It's going pretty good. He's a full-time college student pursuing a degree in business administration. I won't say what college. They're in Florida, though. My passion for watches is huge, and that is what motivated me to start this business. Since starting it, I've just done under $250,000 in revenue. Although I do feel I've done well so far, there are things I'm running into that I'm having difficulty with. The two main areas I'm having issues with and wanting to improve are capital and marketing. Okay? I'm sure you have at least an idea, if not a lot of knowledge, on the current Rolex market. I do own a Rolex. I don't have like a ton of knowledge on it, but I do have some. As my dad said, he showed him one at the convention. That was true. I happened to be wearing it. Currently, I'm running a business off a loan due to some unfortunate things that happened early on. The problem with it is the amount of money that I have combined with the amount of money that he has to pay back monthly, and rapidly growing market makes it hard to keep and maintain an inventory. So, first, I don't know what the exact markup is on used watches. And so with selling Rolexes, you pretty much never get to sell one that's brand new. Rolex only puts out so many watches. They're coveted. Typically more buyers than there are sellers in terms of brand new ones. So they appreciate and things like that. So I don't know, if you pick up one at 10,000, do you get to resell it at 11, at 12, at 13? So we're just gonna have to take a base percentage of something like that. I'm gonna put these headphones on. It'll help block noise for me. Okay. So not knowing on that 250 grand how much profit there was there, right? Because there's obviously expenses with the business like rent and just general overhead, websites, marketing, all of that. what I think is the key factor is here, the reason this person opened up this business was because they're very passionate about um, watches, right? And while that's a good thing to have, like I would rather be passionate about my business than absolutely hate it. I mean, there are plenty of people that run businesses that um, don't enjoy what they do, but they might be really good at it, you know. And I think there's a little bit to that of um, like maybe you're a porta potty company owner and you're delivering tons of them, you're servicing them, you've got a crew of 100 people, and you're making tons of money, but you might not be passionate about it. And I think the advantage there is you probably don't have very many competitors. Now, when it comes to the watch thing, I think there's tons and tons and tons of competitors. Um, at least from when I was kind of Googling, trying to buy my first watch probably 4 or 5 years ago. First, my only watch, I only have one, right? Um, there was lots of people that would sell Rolexes, from eBay to like Bob's watches to, this person wasn't doing it yet, but lots of people like him, right? And so what is the strength here? The strength here is passion, right? But how many people in the world, or maybe even just in Florida or the United States, are passionate about watches? There's lots of forums and hobbyists about it, right? So I think I'm not sure that qualifies as an advantage. That just means that you're hopefully going to like what you do. Um, so the fact that you have disadvantages, I would say. So being a full-time student, you're inherently at a disadvantage to anyone in your market who is not a full-time student or running, or not even running, but attending a job, right? If they have a 40-hour work week job and you have a college student, they're still ahead of you. Even if you're doing both at 40 hours, they're earning an income, right? And so that helps feed back into that business, so that even someone with a job has an advantage, at least at the short term, over someone who is going to college. So I would say net negative there of no income coming in from that. Long-term continued education could be very good. And then you're going to have people that are doing this full time, right? So they wake up every day, they work on marketing, they work on acquiring new watches, they work on selling watches, they work on customer service, they work on all of these things, all while you're stuck at school, basically. And so that's going to make it very tough to compete. Now, we'll talk about the marketing thing, but I want to get through, maybe the disadvantages you have so that we can focus on what is it that's going to be actually a strength for you, right? Because you got to find something that you're going to be good at and be able to market that. Otherwise, there's no reason to buy from you. And that happens all the time, actually. People don't realize that. They don't realize that they need a value proposition of like, why would I buy from this person that makes cheeseburgers versus this person versus this person versus this person, right? About the only thing I can think of so far that you have going for you is you're a college student and you have low overhead and you might be hungrier to make that sale than Bob's Watches, who has 500 watches in stock and 40 employees and something like that. Like that's the one thing I can think of here. So we've established you don't have time, right? And from the email, it sounds like you don't have a lot of money, so you don't have that advantage either. And so the only advantage that you could really have left is that maybe tenacity or attention to detail that other people can't offer. So I've already done due diligence here, and I've looked at his website versus other watch people's websites that I've used in the past. And I actually, when I bought my watch, we bought it from a small local jeweler who was able to find exactly what I want and make a modification to what I wanted. And so I'm kind of familiar with using a smaller watch. Well, it was a jewelry store that found my watch. And so this is a lot of what this company actually provides is they're willing to find the Rolex that you want or other type of watch that you want, and acquire a price, relay that price to you, facilitate the transaction, and hopefully everything goes well. Now, the red alerts that I had seen on the website were linking to social media pages that don't have very many followers. The return policy was all sales are final, and somewhere like Bob's Watches, you at least get 3 days. So you could order and buy this watch, you could get it in your hands, and you can go, you know what, this wasn't worth the $12,000, or oh, they didn't display this flaw correctly, or something like that, and you do have that 3 days. Now, that's actually kind of brutal, but is part of the jewelry industry, right? So when you go and you swipe that credit card to buy that piece of jewelry, there's a bunch of fees there. And when someone returns something, most payment processors don't give you that money back. So let's say you swipe $12,000, there's a 2% fee, right? That's going to be $220 basically, right? If they return that and you refund their money, you, the business owner, are out the $220. So I can see why you wouldn't want to take returns, because it's clearly not good, but also it's going to cost a lot of sales. And it takes away from that safety factor of like, well, there's not a lot of watches here. Everything's asking for a quote. There's all these little telltale signs on a big social media, not a lot of reviews. And so you've got all these little factors working against you. And so I think you have to lean in 110% to basically your personality. Maybe you really do lean into, I'm in college and I'm going there for business. Here's the watches I've sold thus far. Here's the watches I own. Here's my physical location. And, lean into, by working with me, you're going to save more money. And I really need your satisfaction for a review to continue my business down the road. Like, basically lean into the fact that you're new, lean into that you're going to work really hard to make sure they're super happy, because this customer is 1 out of 5 for you and not 1 of 5,000 this month, right? And those are things that are not going to resonate with everybody, because there's going to be people that, don't want that experience at all. But I think right now your business isn't appealing to almost anybody. And I realize it's going to sound harsh, and you've obviously done $250,000 in sales, but I want to put that in perspective for a lot of people. If your average sale is going to be at least $10,000, right? And I think the last watch that I saw that this person had for sale was $21,000. That might only be 12 sales. So you're doing 1 a month, right? And so that's really hard numbers to get reviews and things out that are going to prove trustworthiness to everybody. And so I'll finish up on this website a little bit, then we'll go to like the marketing aspect of it. I think your job is to educate. I think that's, educate people on what makes a good watch, what to watch out for, what are the counterfeits, what are, on this website, one of the social media links actually links to another site that sells watches. It's kind of like eBay. You could list your watch there, you could sell it, they would help facilitate that. They're a broker, right? And I just happened to click on one of the watches just to see, because I wanted to see, like, well, what are they doing here? Is this like eBay? And it was. And they had a watch there. And it was a Oyster Perpetual by Rolex. I like those watches. The interesting thing was, so with Rolexes or high-end watches, or high-end anything really, you want the paperwork, you want the warranties, you want the serial numbers, you want the boxes, you want everything that can come with it. The more complete it is, the more it's gonna basically at least give the illusion it's not well worn, it was taken care of, it's not counterfeit, all of these things, right? But even in those pictures that I was looking at, the manual, if you will, right? When you hovered over it, you could look at it, and it actually said it was a date just. So it has a non-matching manual to what they're selling there. And, for me if I was buying a watch, that would be the number one sign of like, I cannot trust this website, even though it's kind of like an eBay thing. And I really do need to find someone that I can trust and work with. And that might be part of what I would be doing in social media and in my website is educating what to look out for, all of these things, so that if you're showing everyone how to buy watches incorrectly, the assumption would be that you know how to do it correctly, right? And so if you actually have a watch and boom, here's a watch, it's for sale on your website, they're going to assume that it's legitimate because you're showing all of the ways to identify non-legitimate ones, right? Ones that might have aftermarket parts, ones that, are just counterfeit, ones that are missing things, what the value of something that might be missing would be, like, oh, it doesn't have a registration card. Typically, is that 5% off, 10% off? What does that mean? I don't know actually, but you would want to let people know. So that way, if you have all of these things, it would show like, well, why was your price on this Submariner 15% higher than someone else's? And you might have all of the paperwork. You might have the box, right? And then when it comes to social media, this person has LinkedIn, they have Instagram, they have Facebook. I'm going to throw in Google in there. So like Google reviews, right? And yeah, so it's like 4-ish of them, I would say. And so the business has been going for about a year. On Instagram, they had roughly like 12 posts, so like maybe one a month. And the posts were being shared between like Facebook and Instagram. And so what that means is you're making one post, maybe you have your wrist, you put the watch on, you take a picture, right? And then that gets posted to Facebook and Instagram. Now, unfortunately, neither of those are getting traction. So like a lot of them on Facebook would be like 1 to 2 likes. And then on Instagram, maybe 1 comment. And that actually is hurting your brand. So it makes it seem like you don't have engagement. You haven't been around that long. Maybe your account got shut down for doing something illegal. And now, now you're starting up a new one. And so, and there's also YouTube. So 5, and there was like 1 YouTube short on there was all. And like the branding's missing a lot of branding wasn't there. But anyway, I think you have to lean into a personality of like, again, here I am. I'm a college student. I own XYZ watches. I've been into it for this long. Here's why you're going to buy from me. Instead, what we're seeing is like an expensive, well, it wasn't a Rolex. It was a different brand, an expensive watch with the picture taken in front of a Lamborghini, right? And you could see the steering wheel of the Lamborghini. That's how you knew. And I don't think that conveys the value of your brand, right? On one hand, if you're just balling out of control and you own Lamborghinis and you have all these high-end watches, why aren't the watches for sale? Why are they like, I can go find you this watch. I can get you a quote on this watch. Instead, you'd want to be focusing on telling a story. And that story is, this customer came in, they were looking for this watch. I found it 4 weeks later in the exact way they wanted. Here's the deal. I got a 7% commission or whatever that looks like, right? And ideally, you would have like a picture of you and the happy customer, maybe even a little bit of video to go along with that. And you tell the story and you show going, you're buying watches at wholesale and where are you looking for them and that kind of thing. And so the story itself is what's going to bring more people in, right? And so you got to imagine someone's eventually going to land on one of your social media platforms, right? Probably the intent is they at least like watches and maybe they're looking to buy a watch. They want to start learning about you. That's what we all do. The minute we get anywhere, we go, okay, well, what are they selling? Do they seem expensive? Do they seem cheap? Do they have a good selection? What's the return policy? What, like with high-end watches, what is the way it actually gets sold? Do I have to prepay before you ship it out? When you do ship it out, are you insuring it? Like there's all of these things you're trying to learn about this because you're entering into kind of a big contract on something relatively sight unseen unless they happen to live in Florida and they're going to come and buy it from you in person. That being said, if you don't own a watch yet, as in you're going to find me the watch I want, you can't even provide that yet. So you really got to lay out the story. And the best way to do that is to show other people who are happy. And like reviews and testimonials on a website don't do that because they're too easy to fake. And exponentially so, if you're selling this can of soda, we'll take those reviews at face value. When you're trying to sell me something for $10,000+, you're going to need to see a lot of reviews and really try to figure out, like, have they been verified and all of this. And social media, what a lot of people won't realize is it's the number one source of proof. It is the review, right? You'll get people using your hashtags. You'll get people in your videos, right? Just by being around others who seem trustworthy, you'll seem more trustworthy. And people know over time that, maybe I can go on Shutterstock and I can buy an image of an expensive watch in front of a Lamborghini and I could run a business that way. I'm not saying you did that. I'm just saying I might be able to fabricate your business artificially. And if I could, and if that is possible, then that's actually a worry, and that someone else can be doing that, and how many others are doing that, and how are you going to prove that you're not doing that, right? And I think the easiest way would be to shoot a little video like, here I am, it's the watch swap meet, I'm here looking for the deals, right? I've got, and maybe you go, I've got a $12,000 budget today. We're going to see how far I can stretch that and find some diamonds in the rough. And then when I do, I'm going to put those on I'm going to put those on the website, and you guys can reap the benefits because I'm going to sell them a little bit under like full market value because I want to go and do this again next week type of deal, right? And so the way to look at that, though, is when you are selling it under market at the end, it's because you're buying advertising. So like a Bob's Watches, right? If I go to their website and I'm looking at watches for a little bit, I'm going to get I'm going to get retargeted on Google and on Facebook for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, because the higher value items you would buy in a business, the more someone's willing to pay, right? So they might be willing to spend $200 chasing me to get me to buy a watch, knowing that it's going to be at least $10,000, right? And so you might be able to sell your watch at a $200 or $300 or $400 or $500 discount. If everyone's selling, this watch at $13,000, you sell yours for $12,500, and you have the video to explain why. Because if you just discount your watch, people are going to go, well, what's wrong with it? Are we missing things? Is it, is it a little bit shady here? Like, what's going on? But if they watch the video and they go, oh yeah, you walked in, you had $12,000 to spend, you ended up buying this watch, you ended up buying this box, so that you could put that with a matching Rolex down the road that would be missing one. And then this watch is now up. You include the story. Someone can buy it at the discount. You're explaining because you want to get those good reviews. So say, hey, I'm really hoping that the person that buys this at a discount will be fully transparent with how it all went and leave a review, good or bad. And you can look here and see the rest of my good reviews. And you really have to lean into that part, because if Corey starts a watch business tomorrow, I'm going to be able to outspend you. And I would also be able to out social media you in the aspect that I've done it before. I know how to grow. I know I've got editors. I've got all these things. And so you need to just start making your own story. You're going to find people that want to help a younger kid. There's going to be that thing of like, hey, I feel good. Like if it's, really what you want it to boil down to is there's this watch for $13,000 from the industry leader. And then there's this kid selling it for $12,500 who seems pretty trustworthy. Do I want to give 13 grand to a random person, or do I want to help someone? And that's really not demographic, the mom and pop mentality. Like people would rather spend local, they'd rather spend with small business, assuming everything is equal. That being said, if the big corporation allows for, oh, you could pay with a check and it won't be you get a discount. You have 3 days to return it. We have a bigger selection. We have a bigger warranty. We have all of our watches certified by X, Y, and Z. That's going to be a hard hurdle to overcome. So you better tell a really good story and seem really authentic to be able to do that. So, yeah. So yeah, that's the social media part of it. I'll boil it down really easy because this is the mantra that I think more people need to hear. You just have to do it, right? So if I was trying to grow an Instagram right now, 3 posts a day, never missing a day for at least a year, you'd be surprised at how big of a social media account you will make if you just follow that strategy, regardless of how good or bad the content is, or how good or bad your hashtags were, or how engaging the words you're putting with the pictures or video is. Like there's just a level of just showing up to compete, right? And that's the minimum. There's accounts that are putting out 10 posts every day and have experts doing it, but the reality is most people would struggle to do 1 a day. And so doing 3 times a day, and that's morning, noon, and night, hitting different East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, different locales. That's one way just to game that system. And then like YouTube, at least 1 video every single week without fail, edited, done well, or doing YouTube shorts every single day, at least 1 short a day, right? Some of the biggest YouTubers are putting out 3 to 5 videos per day, right? And some of the biggest corporations are doing even way more than that, like wrestling, right? So you have to get to a point where you're at least starting to compete. That's the thing. Like on Facebook, same thing. Consistent content that actually starts to resonate. And what you're going to find is as you start posting every day on Facebook or 3 times a day on Instagram, after maybe 10 postings, right? You can look at the data and you can go, okay, well, these 2 pictures did really well. And maybe that's half naked girl with a Rolex watch, got a lot of attention. You can then decide, is that the person who's going to buy from you though, right? You might find that you're getting better clicks to your actual website based on the educational content of like, here's what to look for in fraud. Here's what to look for. Here's why you might, like learning about what the difference between, a date jest is, the Oyster Perpetual, and then I can't remember what the one that has the day of the week on it too. But I had to learn all that when I'm just a guy that was like, I just want a Rolex. And then you start learning about different Rolexes and what some of the qualities are and why is this one $40,000 and this one's $6,000 and things like that. And I think the people that will engage with that kind of content are more likely to buy than, the Submariner has, the time and date, or not time and date, day of the week and the date of the month, which I'm not a fan of, by the way. My preference is no date or day of the week at all. But so while you're learning, there's certain watch faces that have certain features. And that's actually why I had mine custom changed. I wanted some diamonds. So one of the things on the watch face that I wanted numbers, not Roman numerals, not just like little hashtag marks. And then I wanted like a little bit of bling, some subtle bling. And so like on mine, 12, 3, 6, and 9 have diamonds instead of the number. And then it has, 1, 2, 4, 5, right? And then normally though, with the diamonds, with a diamond face or diamonds in there, you had to have like the ring around the watch be all diamonds. And that was just too, too gaudy for what I wanted. And so I actually had just a normal, I don't know if they call it a crown or whatnot, but the little ring, I had it not be diamond. And so they found me one that was kind of like a plain Jane, upgraded that a little bit. And that's what I wear today. I'm not wearing it right now, but when I do wear it, and I love it. So, but yeah, you have to learn all that and go, well, why can't I get like the Hulk green color with, the chronotype watch with this price. And it's just because those things never existed. You can get a Frankenstein watch to go together. But even that's kind of hard to do. You're having to find different pieces that maybe, maybe had damage and other things. And yeah, you want to watch it was taken care of and not, it's been serviced before you're going to buy it, things like that. So, all right. Let me answer some of the chat here. Lots of food talk. I think it's Saturday night and everybody just got done eating. I did. Yeah, everyone's just hanging out. All right. So if you have some business questions, I will answer them. I've been reading a book. I started reading a book today, and that was, I think, the one I told you I was going to order around pricing. It's actually been fascinating so far. I'm only in the third chapter, but it was only like $21 for the hardback and maybe like 16 for paperback. And it's called, I guess it's called The Myth of Fair Value and How to Take Advantage of It. The premise so far that I've been reading has been kind of interesting, that you could take a jury and present all the facts to them. So you take a jury pool of like 100 people, right? And maybe you break them into groups of 10. So you've got 10 different groups. And you give the facts to all 10 groups, and they read through it, right? And then someone's going to present them with what they want the damages to be, right? So it might be this person hit my car and broke my arm, and no one has insurance. And so therefore, I need $1,000 to cover the damages, right? And that would be presented to, let's say, 30% of those groups. And then the next one would be same set of facts, right? No one had the insurance, and I need $10,000 to cover the damages, right? And then the last set would be, I need $100,000 to cover the damages. Same exact facts presented to all of these, and bigger pools, right? I'm just using the 100 people as an example here. And what they found was that based on the suggested number is what you would get back as a verdict, right? So when you needed $1,000, people would say like, well, we know it's more than $1,000 to fix that car and your broken arm and all of this. And so we're going to award $1,400, right? At $10,000, now they come in and they go, well, okay, yeah, it probably was less than 10,000. So we're going to award 8,200, right? But the interesting thing is, when the last group was asked for $100,000, they come in and they go, well, we know it doesn't cost $100,000, but we're going to award you $42,000, right? And so by purely just asking for more money, you will receive more money, even though it's the same demographic of people in the jury pool, same exact facts presented in the exact same way, right? The only difference was at the end, they chose a different number to ask for. And so and there's a lot of other stuff in the book that basically, another example would be guessing the weight of a suitcase, right? So you've got a suitcase, and one of them weighs 26 pounds and one of them weighs 22 pounds. You can easily pick one of them up and go, this one's heavier than this one. And you can say, yep, 26 versus 24. You wouldn't have been able to tell me how much they weighed. You can tell me that one of them weighs more than another, right? Now, you take that same experiment and you ask people, you don't tell them how much they weigh, and you go, are these heavier than what will be allowed to take on a plane? They're going to allow 26 kg. The heavier one, people will be like, oh, this one's too heavy to go on the plane. And the lighter one, they would say, this one is not too heavy to go on the plane, even though they were both way light enough to go on the plane. It purely based on how it was presented to you, you will perceive the weight differently. And then they go into another experiment. So now you open up the suitcase and you go, what is the value? How much is this, the contents in here worth? And so it keeps changing the value of these things. So even though the weight and the price and it basically kind of boils down to so far that we as humans have no idea how to price things at all, like even remotely. we kind of just guess a number. We look at what information we have, and then our lizard brain kicks in. That's why on so many people, this thing's 80% off, right? It could be twice as expensive as it normally is, but at 80% off, you're getting a deal, right? Like that's the craziest part. What's the title of the book again? It's called The Myth of Fair Value and How to Take Advantage of It. It's meant to be to like help you price things, and really it stems from low, medium, and high pricing is what it's going to cover a lot of. And so an example of that would be if you sell just one item, people have to decide, is this worth it or isn't it worth it, right? But the minute that you have two items of the same item but two different sizes, right? Now you've got people that might go, well, I buy the cheap version. You've got have some people that buy the expensive version. You've got people out there that might be buying a Rolex and like, I always buy the best, right? And then you're gonna have people that just always try and save money. The minute you add the third choice in there, though, you're actually going to make people buy the middle. So the people that were buying low will start buying the mid, and people that were buying the high end will start buying the mid also. And so there's examples of where you can have your best-selling product be, the smallest size, and then by adding two more bigger sizes, you now actually make a middle size be your best-selling size. And vice versa. You can basically manipulate it back and forth. And it's just because the way our brains work, we go, well, I don't want to, I'm not in a position right now to buy the most expensive. If I buy that might be too cheap. Another example of that in the book actually is they were talking about having problems selling out stadiums and like opera houses and things like that. And so let's say you've got this opera house, you're putting on a show. What they used to do, they'd have like their best seating, right? The stuff close to the stage and maybe like the box seats and all that. And they would sell out super quick. People really wanted the good seats. And all the other seats were cheap because they weren't so good. And no one would buy them at all. Like they would sell like 10% of those. Once they switched to upping the price of all the seats, right? So the premium seats, let's say they're $500, and before the cheap seats were $50. No one wanted the $50 seats because they're $50. They must be terrible. Once they upped them to now $350 to $500, so the cheapest one being $350, they would sell out the whole place because now even those high seats, it's a hot commodity ticket. It must be good, and people were no longer fearful that they were buying a bad seat. And this another example in the book, which there's lots of more than this. So don't worry, I'm not reciting the whole book for you. At a concert, they had a city initiative to make sure that everyone could attend these basically park events. And so the cheapest seats were subsidized, and they were $1 per seat, right? And no one was buying them because, again, the perceived like, oh, $1 must be terrible. Even though the government was making up the difference, that was lost in the marketing and all of that. And so, again, once they increased the prices of those tickets, they started selling. And it turns out those tickets were actually really good, and everyone loved those seats and that kind of stuff. But the fear of purchasing an inferior product compared to something else that was being sold, as either a better seat, a bigger size, a better value, whatever it is, stop people from ever purchasing the lower one, even though it was really, really good. And so, yeah, studying these kind of things will hopefully give me a little more insight on different ways to price things. Like, it could be I've been pricing things all wrong. Could be I've been doing really good things. Could be like, that's explaining why when we did this, that happened. Who knew, right? And there's lots of studies on this stuff, and they've been working on it for many, many years, and they're still learning to this day. Yeah, and this is a pretty good book, though, because a lot of books I'll get like a chapter or two in and be like, oh, this is brutal. I cannot keep reading this. Like, this is just not useful. This one, I think I'll actually, maybe I'll get halfway through. Or, it's not that like I don't finish books, but a good book for me, it's usually so so much good information. You almost need to like start digesting and putting stuff into action before you can finish. Um, yeah. What's my top 3 books? I'd have to go find some. One of them that I really liked is, I think it's called Why We Buy. Let me see if that's true. I'm gonna look it up on Amazon real quick. I think it's Why We Buy. Why We Buy. Is that it? Yep. Yeah, I really liked. So it's Why We Buy: The Science of Shopping. And I've talked about this book way long time ago, probably maybe even on my main channel. But I read this book before I set up my store, and they studied things like, well, basically the premise was they would pay people to just sit and watch people in grocery stores and just observe, and just their whole job was to just take notes and see if they noticed anything, right? And what they would notice is with dog treats, right? They were specifically looking at this pet section, and they noticed that there would be someone who would make the decision to purchase it, but then usually someone else was putting it in the cart. And what they actually noticed was that a parent would give the okay to a kid, essentially, right? And that kid would be grabbing the dog treats and putting them into the basket, but the adult had to make the purchasing decision. And then they also noticed that same behavior in the elderly. Basically, they also wanted to purchase stuff for their dogs, but they might have a spouse or a kid or someone with them helping them shop, and they would grab it. So they were learning about this phenomenon on, there'd be someone who makes the decision to purchase, and there'd be someone else who's actually grabbing the item. And so what that led to when they were observing people is the parent would say, yep, go ahead, get, Wincy and Tiki some treats. And then a kid would be climbing to the top to grab the treats they needed and then climbing back down the display. And that's because traditional marketing would tell you, like, put dog treats, something you want to sell a lot of, at the eye level of the consumer. And at that point, they thought the consumer was the adult, when the consumer is actually the kid. So the kid says, oh, let's get these for the dog. And then the parent says, okay, we can get that. And they also notice this in like the cereal aisle, because the kids are like, oh, I need to get this cereal, right? And then they also noticed while watching the elderly that if they didn't have someone with them, they were trying to stretch and like pull it down with their cane, because they might have been in a wheelchair or an assisted scooter type of situation. And so what they've learned is like, oh yeah, you put these consumables like this, put them down low where the people that are actually buying them can reach them, instead of putting them at the purchaser decision level, that adult, they're not the ones that ever grab it. And so now you can have a kid and go and grab it, run all the way back, to a different aisle where their parents are, and they go, yep, we can get that. So you'll notice like cookies and other stuff like that might be down there. They also noticed that they also studied what they call the butt brush effect. And that was any aisle in which it was narrow enough that if someone was looking at the merchandise this way and someone needed to get by them, if there was fear that while trying to get by, they would brush up against them at all, they would actually just turn around and go to a different aisle. And so they were able to basically find that anything under 40 inches was basically a kiss of death, of like, it may as well have been single file, because people won't go by each other. They don't want to bump into someone. So that's where kind of a standard 4 feet or more has come from in retail, to make sure that two people could, be shopping on either side of the aisle, or two, baskets could go by each other, whatever that's going to look like. And they only found this stuff just because they just observed obscene amounts of people just going like, okay, that's a weird phenomenon going on right there. And there's also other things like, oh yeah, you put milk at the back of the store, and you do all of these types of things. But yeah, lots of psychology behind why we buy stuff and who's buying it, and who's actually making the purchase decision. I think last time we were talking, someone had mentioned that, like, when a new car is bought, or maybe I was just reading about it, I don't remember which now, but basically when someone's buying a new car, uh, all the marketing is towards a male typically when we're marketing for cars, but women most times are the one making the purchasing decision. So even if I'm the male and your marketing's worked really well on me and I need a new giant truck, it is so uncommon for me just to go and buy that for myself without consulting uh, my partner, right? And so and vice versa, like, usually the persona of a female wouldn't go out and just do that either. They would consult their partner. That being said, most all car advertising is geared towards the male, and so that's why the female is the purchaser. If you were to change that marketing, I think we would see a difference in, oh, we've really marketed well to the female, and the female will ask their partner, and as relationships get more and more and more dynamic, obviously, some of these statistics and the way things are will change in the studies. Have I read Freakonomics? Let me see. I don't know if I've read that or it's just been like on my to do list. Did I read this? No, I haven't read it. I think I might have started listening to it, but I haven't read Freakonomics yet. Anyway, let me analyze this question. Have you found a way to use the wisdom of crowds in business? Yes. So you guys might have noticed lately on my main channel, I've been doing a lot of basically polling people. And so the latest one I did, actually, I was trying to do it for the business channel, and I think one of my mods pulled it down because it was getting pretty spicy in the comments section. But it was asking the poll that I put up was assuming that people would make a livable wage and wages would be adjusted. Would you get rid of tipping? Right? And only tip when truly exemplary services or something out of the norm existed, instead of kind of what we have right now is an expected tipping system. And it basically went to about 80% said, yes, I would get rid of tipping in a heartbeat. And then 20% said, no, they wouldn't. And what I really wanted, because I myself hate tipping. I do it out of fear, as in like, I don't want someone to not make enough money. I don't want to, be an outcast if I was to go back to the same establishment and all those things, right? But what I really wanted to see with this poll was the people that I knew people would be vocal of like, you can't get rid of tipping, you fool. I wanted to see what their thought process was on why. And like a couple of them that stuck out to me one was, I grew up and I saw how hard my mom struggled and we would not have made it without those tips. And they totally like ignored the fact that even in the poll, I said, you would make a living wage without the tips. And so what I was trying to really do is think about, like, is this how kind of some voting goes on and decisions are made where like we look past the facts and we rely so hard on a personal experience that it trumps everything else. Because in theory, right, if you were making $2 an hour and then you had tips and it made you $12 an hour, but instead you would have made $12 an hour guaranteed without having to use tips. I actually see a lot of benefits to that. One would be before COVID, right? If you're making $2 an hour plus tips, and if you're getting cash tips and maybe you're not reporting them all, right? But maybe you even are, right? There's some variability there. And as COVID's breaking out, right? And you're getting less and less tips, and then you go on unemployment. Well, unemployment is going to be based on the wages previous. Now, if you were locked in at $12, you go on unemployment, your unemployment's based on that. If you were maybe not being so truthful, which I know, well, I don't know, but it seems like a lot of people I've talked to that, including my wife, like we like to tip in cash, or she does anyway, because like, well, it's better for them, right? And the thought is like they wouldn't have to claim it if they really needed it or something. The problem is that actually hurts someone in the long term, right? So any unreported wages aren't going to help you get uh, a loan, maybe for a car or a house, right? Or unemployment is going to be lower. There's a lot of things that are going to be affected by that. And so it's actually worse if you were going to get the same amount of money, right? And that's the fear. The fear is that like we don't tip and people are only making $2 an hour and there's poverty and it's horrible, right? The other use case that was brought up kind of a lot was that that service would be worse if we don't tip people. And from what I've experienced in lots of other cultures, that hasn't been true. That being said, I get plenty of service from a lot of things that don't get tipped, and it's not terrible. The best one I can think of is when I fly first class, which I do. I don't tip the steward or stewardess, right? They might be giving me a Diet Coke. They might be serving me lunch. They might be doing all of the checking in on me a lot, right? They don't get a tip. And in fact, I've never seen someone give them a tip. Maybe it's happened. I've never seen it myself. Another service would be like the pilot. They're not getting a tip either. That being said, when I get a shuttle ride from where I park my car to the terminal where I'm going to board a plane, right? I'm expected, and I do tip the person that gives me that ride. Like it's so foreign to me though. So I tip the person that's driven me for 3 minutes between two destinations. And by the way, their wage, because I pay a surcharge for this, and you can look it up. It's Master Park in Seattle. I believe their starting wage for their people is $17.73 because that's what minimum wage is there. Maybe it's $17.23. So there's already an extra charge for that. They're claiming there's an extra charge on the bill. And then I'm tipping them. So they're making some amount of money. I can't know the aggregate for that. But there are lots of services that we don't tip for, and why not, right? And so if I can get great service from, even if I'm not in first class, I get pretty good services and coach and all of that, right? So in the pilot, they fly all the same, whether I'm in first class or I'm in the back, doesn't matter, right? They're not getting tipped. And you might say, well, they make a lot of money. Well, yeah, that's right? So when you make a lot of money, or you make money that's good for your situation, you are led by, let's not screw this up. I want to keep this job. And so I think we could, not that we necessarily have to, but I would be in favor of getting rid of tipping so that people could have a more reliable income. They don't have to go, well, Christmas is going to be banging with all the good tips. And then after New Year's, it's pretty slow and I got to watch what I'm spending and who knows. And one thing that was brought up that I really hadn't considered was they said they were a cook, I believe, and they really liked the tipping because it meant that people didn't call out. And I had to think about that. And I thought that makes a lot of sense, actually. Like in our business, we start people at $22 an hour, and they get vacation and they get sick days. They accrue those times, right? And when they call out, if they're using sick time, they're going to make the same money as if they came in, right? But if you were in a tipping situation, and let's say you weren't reporting all your income, and in theory, you call out for a day, an 8-hour shift, and there's only $2 an hour on the table because that's what your minimum wage is, you're highly incentivized to go in because you can't afford to only make $16 that day. Now, that's actually really good for the business. It actually, I believe, is like a net neutral for the employees, because when employees call out in any kind of service industry, or even just most businesses, it's adds stress to the people that didn't call out. But you don't want people coming in and get everybody sick either. So that's why I'm saying it's like a net neutral, but it's very good for the business if you basically are screwing the employee and be like, you get nothing if you don't come in, or $16 instead of, would have been $12 an hour. So it would have been, $100. And so I had never thought about that though. I never thought about like, that does incentivize the business, even another way to do that. And then there's all the things of like, if people aren't reporting all of their income like they should be, they're paying less into Social Security and less taxes. So your local communities are hurt a little bit more, but then also you're setting yourself up worse for later in life when you do need to retire. And then if they're offering, like 401k like we do, if they're not reporting those tips, then they wouldn't be getting as much into their 401k. It's kind of this big domino effect of it's kind of, from my standpoint, the way I can see it, it's kind of terrible for um, the employee long term. In the short term, it's great. I've had a lot of friends, and I've met a lot of people that are really making a crazy amount of money doing that. And I think when we talk about the situation, it tugs on our heartstrings. Like, what about the mom working 7 different waitress jobs just to afford a meal? But then there's also the other side of, like, what about the 16-year-old kid that's pulling in $400-500 a night, working 4-hour shifts? Like, there, and I knew a lot of those. Like, when I was playing Magic the Gathering and other stuff, I'd be like, "Where are you getting all this money?" And like, "Oh yeah, I'm a waiter over here. Had a good night in tips." And they would complain about not getting the good shifts and all of that, and how it's unfair. And you literally hear it, and you're like, "But wait, how much money do you make? You're averaging like $2,000 a week, and you're working like 20 hours." Like, and you're angry that you didn't get the better shifts to be making like 3 grand in 20 hours. Like, oh, okay. Uh, so I think there's extremes on both ends. And I think overall for society, it's better to be able to sleep at night knowing, hey, when I go into work tomorrow, I will get paid X. When I get sick, I'll get paid X, and be able to plan around that and not have nearly as much volatility of, like, well, like right now, one of the other arguments was, if we raise the wages and we don't rely on tips, the price is going to go up on food. I don't know about you guys, but if we're tipping 20%, right? And we spent $20, that's a $4 tip. If the food is just $24 and then the person got a livable wage, my price didn't change at all for what I bought, right? And so it would disproportionately penalize people who don't tip, but they're part of that problem anyway, right? Of not covering the cost, and then other people are forced to cover that cost. So I don't believe that it would disproportionately go up. It might mean that some people who don't tip would therefore now be sharing part of the overall cost, but it shouldn't actually be a net negative loss. And if it is, right, that's a sign that the worker was never getting paid enough to begin with, and therefore the system was already broken. And then I was going to do a whole long video about this. I just never have time to put it together. But I did a little bit of research because I started thinking about, I thought about tipping a long time because I've hated tipping since before I ever had like any kind of money. And because so I would also state, tipping hurts a lot less the more money you have. But when you don't have much money, people will be like, well, then just don't go out, blah, blah, blah. But you still have to go out, right? Like, it's your partner's birthday, or it's your birthday, or whatever, right? Whatever that's going to be. And I did math based on where I live, which was Washington. At the time, everybody was making like minimum wage was like $12 an hour. And the average waiter or waitress was 4 to 5 tabletops, right? So that means 4 or 5 groups. And then I did research because that's what I do. And the average diner, person that goes out to eat, is about a 45-minute tabletop. So I rounded that to an hour, right? And so if every table tipped just $2, right? And that'd be I don't think I've left a $2 tip in forever. Like, it's been a long, long, long time since I've left only $2, right? But if every person just tipped $2, that person was making $12 an hour plus 4 tabletops. That's another 8. They're making $20 an hour. They were actually doing really good for that time. That would have been like 8-9 years ago, right? Now, that being said, most people tip 15 to 20%, right? And even on a $20 order, like, you and your partner are out to eat, even if you bought the cheapest stuff, you only spent $10 each and you didn't get anything to drink with it. That's $20. Your tip is going to be $4. Now you've got 4 tables doing that, 16. They're making $28 an hour, which is way more than I was making in time. I was making $12 an hour, right? The minimum wage. So where I was going with all of this, though, Yeah, no tax on the tip. Yeah, also there'd be tax on top of that as well. But where I was going with it was now that I'm, Mr. Guy that does business and really likes to study business, I was thinking, I've always heard that margins are absolutely terrible in the restaurant industry. And so I started looking up uh, how much per plate of food or how much money was profit. And depending if it was fast food versus fast casual. So fast casual would be like Chipotle, Taco Del Mar. I don't know any other ones off the top of my head, but and then you'd have like fine dining, right? The most profitable was fast food, which was like 6% profit. So if you sold $100 worth of food, you made $6. And then you had fast casual, and that was like 4 to 6%, right? And so $4 to $6. And then you had fine dining, and fine dining was 1 to 3%, right? And most meals at 8 years ago was not fine dining. I was more, I guess it wasn't fast casual, so it was a real sit down restaurant, right? So then I was like, okay, let's do that math. You spend $100, right? So you let's say you go out to a nice restaurant, you're getting steak and lobster and drinks or something, right? And you spent $100. If their profit margin was 3%, right? So 1 to 3% can't be right. It definitely can be right. Like most businesses struggle to break 10%. That's including paying employees, insurances, breakage, spoilage, renovations, like everything that's got to be paid, paying accountants, paying everything, right? That's at the very, very end. Anyway, so they're making, but maybe even if you want to say 10%, right? So $100 and they got 10%, they only make $10. You're tipping 15 to 20%. So on all the food that was made, the person that paid for the insurance, the person paying the minimum wage hours, the person with the accountant, the person putting the graphics on the window, the person creating the menu, the person paying to have the parking lot maintained, the person paying the landlord and all of that, they make $10. The person that walks your food and takes your order and does those things makes 15 to 20% or $15 to $20 on that order, right? That's kind of a crazy thing. Another example, and maybe I can find it here. Maybe I'll share it because people, are thinking like, you didn't read that. No, I read it. We're going to use a coffee stand example. Let's go here. Let's see if we can find, this is overall how much, I want to know how much they make on a cup of coffee. Cup of coffee. Here we go. This says, all right, coffee cup margin for our coffee shop. The following tables describe profit gross margin on a 12-ounce cup of coffee, right? They are saying the price is $3.20, right? The ingredients and packaging are 60 cents. The electricity is 10 cents. The gross profit margin is 78%, right? So they're going to make, well, I got to do the math there, but 78% of 320. So they're going to make $2.49. Now, keep in mind, that does not include what they're paying the person working. So that's just like straight up right there. So it's really going to depend on how many cups of coffee they can sell per person, right? But the point I want to make is it's very common for people to tip $1 or $2 for a thing of coffee, right? And so let's say you've got a coffee stand and they're, like we've got a lot of them around here, and maybe they're doing a cup of coffee every 10 minutes on average, just the whole day. Like there's going to be like lunchtime super busy. There's going to be some other times they're super busy. And but they're going to get paid minimum wage, and minimum wage around here is about $14. So, right. So that's going to be $14 divided by 6. So that's $2.33 per 10 minutes. And that doesn't include the business taxes they're going to pay on top of that. And so what you're going to see all of a sudden is when you do all that math, that margin drops to single digits again. And that's a scary thing. And then when you drop that $1 or $2 in the tip bucket, the person that makes the coffee that just shows up for work makes more money than the person that maybe invested $50,000 to set up the coffee stand, has the insurances, does the account work and all of that. That's a crazy thing because of the tip culture. And so what you might find is actually if the pricing was just now a cup of coffee was $1 more and tipping wasn't allowed, that you would get more upgraded facilities and better thing. Now, not always. You can just be like, yep, the guy bought another, Ferrari or Lamborghini or whatever. But it's not as easy as we think it is. I really wish I had the one I had, because it really put it out well. Like it would basically go like it included margins for everyone. Okay, here's one. This one's saying that this article saying that it's about 12% on a cup of coffee. So again, a good example would be Starbucks, right? Starbucks, let's say you spend $7. You buy a venti, triple, quad, double thingy. I don't drink coffee, but add more names you can onto it, right? Starbucks coffee. You spend $7, and at $7, let's say it's $6.25 is $6.25 is before tax, right? So that's actually the tax. You kind of just set that aside. You're paying $7 total though. At $6.25 times 0.12, there's 75 cents profit there, right? Now, the crazy part is Starbucks allows you to tip now through their app. If you were to tip $1, which I think is a completely reasonable thing, because I think as a tipping culture, you tip less than $1, you're going to feel pretty guilty. And people will be like, you cheap SOB, right? So if you tip $1, you have given the person who made the coffee, they will make more money than than Starbucks would to even be there, right? That's a crazy concept. Now, not everybody's going to tip, right? But when you rely on tips or you allow tips, you get these really weird distribution of profits. And, it causes infighting in some companies where, like the cooks are super angry because they're not getting tipped out. The people that are busting the tables aren't getting tipped out. You've got the dishwashers not getting tipped out. And there are ones that tip everybody out, right? There's also restaurants where the owners basically steal all the tips. Like there's every scenario under the sun here. But in general, I think if people realize that in some instances, tipping the person who handed you the food gave you more or gave them more than the person who cooked it or owned the business. Now, I totally get it when you say like, yeah, but that person had to do X, Y, and Z, and they did all that work. They deserve it. But then there's like, okay, what about the Thai restaurant down the road? Mom and pop owned. They hired a waitress. I ordered it to go, right? I walk in and there's that sales pressure of like, there's that tip jar. And they're kind of like, and maybe you sign it and there's like, and there's a tip, or the one I hate the most where you like swipe the card and then they're like, let me turn this around. You have to manually hit that button acknowledging you're not tipping me and then bring that back, right? So high pressure tactic to get that sales. And you might go, yep, a couple of bucks, whatever. You start thinking like, what's the least amount of money? Because literally they just handed me the food. Like that cook should have got more. And by the way, my wife has done this quite a few times where she'll ask the manager and be like, make sure this gets to the cook, or she'll walk back and stand by there and be like, can I watch you hand this to the cook? The food was amazing or whatever. Right. But it's a crazy system that it makes almost no sense in my mind. It benefits almost anyone I don't want to. Not that I don't want to benefit people, but it's like depending on where you're tipping, you have no idea who should have really been getting that extra money, right? So it's a really weird thing, and so I'm in the service industry. I've worked retail and I've done all this. I think we've got 2 tips ever since I worked at the store. We have the ability to turn on the tipping feature at our retail store, but I don't think it makes sense, right? Because it puts people in that weird scenario of like, you just spent $312 on an aquarium. Would you like to tip me for my extra good service today? Attacking tipping in defense of the server is solving a problem that doesn't exist. Yeah, I don't think that's a true statement, because there are problems. Like there's plenty of people who don't make enough money because they don't get tipped, and part of, you got to look at the economics of the country, right? Someone who is a software developer in Washington who makes 200 grand a year is naturally going to be looser with their money and tip more than if you go to a non-tech state where everyone is a farmer. They're going to be more, and this is gross overgeneralizations, right? But if there's less money being made by the average person, there's going to be less tips, and therefore it disproportionately changes things. There's also, there are states where the minimum wage is $2. Here it's 15, right? So there's this huge disparities. We run into it all the time, actually. Our employees are getting $22 an hour, but you go to some of our competitors where they're running a warehouse and they're literally paying people $12 an hour. So there's a $10 difference. And so that's a big thing that we have to think about and really figure out how we're gonna pull that off. Thanks for the $1.99 tip. Yeah, but in general, super chats are a great example of that tip of, I actually turn them off from my main channel because I don't like it, and I turn them on here. My whole goal here, so actually if you're reading I don't know if in this description because I'm using the software, but the goal was there's been people asking for like business advice and things like that, and if someone wants to super chat like $100, and this is for like a real business, right? Like this, you guys can always ask questions and I'm going to answer whatever seems interesting to me and that kind of stuff. But if you had a pressing question, I don't think $100 is unreasonable for any legitimate business. Like even for like the guy did $250,000 selling Rolex watches, right? $100 if you got the right tip. Like I've used to, when I was consulting or paying for consulting work on YouTube, one time I spent $500 for like a 1 hour session. And then one time I spent $3,200 for 3 hours. And the $500 thing I think was worth it. The $3,200 was not worth it. It was more of the same. But when you have a business, you kind of have to, you're spending money. If you gain insight that makes you more money, it's super worth it. And I also state that I'll just do my best, because even like 6 years ago, we used to sell like basically Zoom meetings with me at $100 an hour, and there was way too many takers, so we stopped doing it altogether. But I do like talking about business, and I think it's fun to like learn about a scenario and go, okay, I don't know anything about that, but here's how I would try and tackle that, and I might fall on my face, but who knows? How is the concept of let me put that up. How is the concept of don't listen to customers, watch what they do, applied to what you do on YouTube? A real easy example for me would be when I post a unboxing video, right? So that means we show a bunch of fish, we unbox them, and we'll have like 40,000 people watch it. And the comments will be filled like, we want to see more of this. We love this, right? All of that. The problem is any video we do right or like where we should be is 100,000 views. So if you're listening to the customer, you're going, yeah, people are loving this. Like there's 2,000 comments. People love it. But what the customers are or what the customer's actually doing is, of course, everybody that comes in for tuna fish pizza night loves it. So they're all like, yeah, I love tuna fish pizza night. Let's do this. Right. And you got half the pizza parlor packed. Right. And that's one day a month, let's say. But you didn't fill the rest of it, and they're not there every day. And it turns out, of all the customers you have, they want $10 pepperoni pizzas all the time. That's what they want. And every time you don't do that, you're just alienating them because they show up, they spend their money, and that's what they want. Even though you might have this demographic over here going, tuna fish pizza, I'm all about it. And that's what our videos do quite often is there'll be people that are very passionate about a subject and they sing it from the mountaintops and all of that. You've done a great job. I need more of this. I can't get enough, blah, blah, blah. Right. And, but the reality is the analytics show, and just like, if we were to turn into dollars, like, well, I do an unboxing, I make $40,000. I do this type of video, I make $100,000. Naturally, you're going to do the thing that makes more money. Now, you do have to think about things like, well, is this a gimmick? Are people going to burn out? Do I need variety? And that's why we still do some unboxings, because we know that, well, maybe you can just keep tuna fish pizza on the menu. You don't have to do a whole, like, it's tuna fish pizza night every second Saturday of the month. You could just, try and cater to it, but not lean into it too hard. Let's see. I'm going to click this one. It's long and I can read it. Around me, there's no good local fish stores. All the same stuff, all easy beginner community stuff. Shop in my town says it's just what he knows. Would it be wise to open up a shop with wider variety? Maybe. I doubt it, though. Think about it like this. Like, take yourself out of fish keeping. And you go and you're like, there's 6 Ford truck dealerships in my town. Everybody drives a Ford. Should I open up a Lamborghini shop? Like, the reality is, like, it kind of seems like everybody wants trucks. Yeah, but there's like 7 people that really want Ferraris. Like, but is that enough to go against all these truck dealers and all their marketing and advertising and what everybody already knows to be true? So my advice would be, no, you should open up a local fish store that sells the exact same crap as they do, but win with service and a smile, and then very slowly go, hey, I have 600 different Ford trucks on my lot, but I also have 2 Ferraris, and just see how those start going. And if they start going really, really well, and take it slow, because it's really easy to be like, hey, I got this new thing, and everyone jumps on the new thing. But then they can also jump back out of it. And I've seen that happen a lot. You see that in our hobby of like, yep, I'm getting into saltwater. I sold all my freshwater stuff. I have 3 saltwater tanks. And 4 months later, they're back to freshwater and they've totally dropped it. And if you were to follow that trend with your customer, they would be dropping you and going to your competitor. So you got to be really careful with that kind of stuff. By the way, you can get tuna fish on your pizza in the UK. Yep, John's on it. He's a smart man. I imagine they're doing what's most profitable, and going against them would mean you still have to carry the same stock and compete. That's most likely. One of the sayings that I tell people in my company, we always have to assume our competitor is doing things right, because it's really easy to discount them and be like, they're so dumb. No one's buying that crap. No wonder they're not as good as us, right? And if you always take that stance, though, you're never going to see when they are doing it better than you, and you're losing ground. And so even though I'm like, I'm pretty sure this doesn't work, I always go, let's assume it is working. What would we do if that was working really well? Should we research into that? Should we pivot? Should we find a way to see if it's doing really well? Because it's really easy to go, I just don't like them. If you hate Italian food and you run a great Mexican restaurant, yeah, ain't nobody liking Italian food. Like, yeah, Mexican food's where it's at. But the reality is, well, there's going to be people that like that. And maybe there's something to learn from it. Like, oh, yeah, they got those unlimited breadsticks. Okay, we got unlimited chips. What else could we do, right? How do I decide when to take bigger risks at the co-op and when to act more conservatively? In general, do you have a lower risk tolerance for the company? Yes, I am very risk adverse, and in fact, all the way back to the beginning, to the person that was talking about going to college and the watch business and everything. My initial thing was like, go get a job. That's my advice is go work for a watch seller, learn the business, get paid by that, then launch your business. And I live the same way in that all the time investment capital reaches out to us, want to loan us money, make a bigger move. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Let us buy you out. Let us invest in your company. Let's make this happen. And my business is run on cash. So if we need $200,000 to launch a product, we earn $200,000 and then launch that product. Even though, like right now, we can click a button and like our payment processor will loan us like $1 million, and we could make that thing happen 5 times over. The problem is when you make a mistake with loaned money, it hurts so much harder than profits. If I make a horrible mistake and I invest $200,000 and the product is absolute garbage and nobody wants it, we've lost $200,000. If I take a loan out for $200,000, I launch this product and it goes terrible. I now have a product that no one will buy, and I'm paying 8% interest on that. And so now I'm like, I've got no income coming in, or at least not the income I was planning on, right? I probably got some angry customers, so I'm really taking a beating there too. And the longer I'm taking to pay it off, the more it's costing me. Now it's costing me, it might cost me $300,000 by the time I pay it off. And that's assuming everything goes well, right? You could take out a loan for $200,000, your product sucks, COVID hits, and now you owe $500,000, right? So it can get really bad where I'm never in a race. So what's the downside for me? You could launch this product today and you get your results tomorrow. If I don't get to launch for 18 months because I have to save up, right? I'm still not losing money really. Like you make more money, but there's also more risk. I have to hire more people. I have to have more storage. Like there's all of these things, right? And especially if we go and we pick a number and let's say the profit margin is 10%, right? The reality is on that 200K, let's say you can sell it for 400K, right? And if everything goes great and there's no returns and there's no all of this other stuff, at the best, I can take this loan for $200,000, take this risk. And if everything worked out perfectly, and assuming I didn't have to hire anybody else, I didn't have to store it, I didn't have any extra costs that incurred by launching this product, I would make $40,000 in profit, right? But how long would it take me to make $40,000 anyway? Maybe that takes me 5 months, right? So if I don't launch the product, I make $40,000 profit. If I do launch the product, right, it might take me 5 months to make $40,000 profit. I still have to sell it all. So I don't actually get any more money in my pocket any faster, but I take on an incredible amount of risk. And so everything we do and everything we own is cash. We never take terms out with anybody, which the only time I ever did that was at the very beginning of the business. I have a silent business partner that owns 25% of my business. They gave me $50,000 and we have a contract that if I had failed, I owed him nothing because I, at the age of 28, didn't want to run a business into the ground by 30 and be $50,000 in debt trying to get through my 30s to my 40s and then get to start my life again at 40 because I had to earn, because I was a guy making $12 an hour. It takes a long time to pay back a $50,000 debt when you run into the ground. And that would mean I stepped away from my job. I have a gap in my employment history. And it would take, so now I'm 40 starting at ground zero. And so he was willing to do that. And that's why he's got such a big stake in my company of 25% for only $50,000 because I'm a 28-year-old kid who seems kind of smart, but no one knows if I'm proven yet. And turns out was a great investment on his part. But we've never taken out a loan or anything after that. We have credit cards, obviously, but we pay them off like every 2 days, just so we can get points and things. But yeah, all the inventory we have right now, which we probably have $500,000 or $600,000 worth of inventory, all the assets, all the payroll, all the cash that sit around, all this stuff that we're putting into R&D, all in cash. So, and that's the biggest strength. So I think one of my strengths is I'm pretty good in front of a camera. That's pretty lucky. I happen to be passionate about my hobby. That's good, right? But I don't think that's enough. I think the biggest strength I have is most of my competitors aren't doing everything in cash. So when times are tough, we don't feel it nearly as hard. So, slow and steady wins that race for me. And, but you're only an $11 million company. What if you're a $100 million company? Yep. What if I was out of business too? Like there's always a downside and there's an upside. You got to weigh the risks. And for me, when things are going okay, I just want to keep them going okay. I don't believe in, well, your competitor's doing this and the first one to race. A lot of times the first person to lose money, to make the mistake, you're getting careless. What I love about, I have to take 18 months to build this money up. I get to think about it a long time. I get to perfect that process. I get to make sure I'm real sure this product's going to make it instead of, spending someone's borrowed money and turns out, ooh, I was a little ahead of myself. All right. Let's read this question. Is there a major difference in individual value between a random YouTube viewer, YouTube premium viewer, a subscriber, and a member? Does the value stack proportionally with each edition? We've only just started to scratch the surface on that, really, because in the past we never had a way to link up if you were just a viewer, a subscriber, a member, whether you had YouTube Premium, and then you bought from our store. There was no link between it. Now we have one link. If you're a YouTube member, you can link yourself up to our website and get a discount. We now can put a value. So we have the lifetime average value of a normal customer, and then we also have the lifetime average value of a member, and those are different values. I think we still need a little more data, but it's pointing to that people that are a member typically will spend more with our business than someone who's not a member, which is kind of logical. But we don't have any way to see like purchasing power, for instance, between a viewer who never subscribes, someone who has YouTube Premium, and someone who's a subscriber. We only have the one link currently, and so we don't really have a good understanding of, that's one of the things we'd love to figure out, and we're trying to, is at the point they're just a viewer, what are they worth to us? At the point that they're a subscriber, what are they worth to us? And then at the point they're a member, right? And so the first step is normal person buying from us. Let's say they're worth $100, and then lifetime value, right? So over the course of the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, they spend $100 with us. And then a member, maybe they spend $300, right? And so now what are we willing to spend to get members? And so that might be things like giving away different swag items at conventions and hiring professional speakers like we had speak today. We're investing money to get people to become members. So we're providing them extra benefits because on average, they will spend more money with us. Now, that's on an average, right? You still will have a person that spends $5 a month and will never spend a dime with our actual business. But then you'll have, the counter to that might be the person that spends $5 a month and also spends $500 a month with our business. But no, we would love to see that. And that's, we're really big into analytics and just trying to understand. And, whether it's in a book or not, someday there's going to be someone who writes a book on, memberships lead to X. And we see it all the time, right? Like, we just don't think about it. Like, if you have an Amazon Prime membership, you're more likely to order from them. If you have a Walmart membership, you're more likely to order from Walmart. If you have a Costco membership, you're more likely to shop at Costco. And we see those things. An average Costco trip, on average, you spend more than if you just went to your local grocery store. And Costco might be the same as Sam's Club and other kind of warehouse, have to buy in to get a club, and in theory get access to maybe more bulk products or more more like a premium product maybe made specifically for them. It might save you a little bit more money than if you went to the actual store. Let's see. I don't see every stream. Where are you? The quality of the stream is not as high as normal. So I'm in my office upstairs right now. Lighting is pretty terrible. So normally I do it during the day. And then also I'm using a new software. So there's like a bunch of things at play here. On my screen, it looks like there's maybe not enough light, and the cameras struggle when there's not enough light. They have to compensate. But then also, in theory, the software could be having a problem as well. Not a problem. It just handles it differently. And so I mostly wanted, because I get some benefits. I can put stuff on screen. If I was doing something on my main channel, I would also I can stream to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So I get twice as bang for my buck. But if quality's too bad, for instance, right? Like, maybe I'm not going to use that, and I'll go back to the old style. But a lot of it is, I test all the time. I just don't always test in front of a crowd, essentially. And this channel allows me to do that, because this is just a, kind of a fun thing for me to do. I mean, maybe someday, like there's talks of me doing another, kind of business talk at like the next convention I go to, which it's a hobbyist convention, but in the past I've done it also where they put together because so many businesses go also, I actually present to them, all the business owners, the day before we put on the big convention for all the fans. And so maybe it'll turn into something like that long term. I don't know. I guess a lot of that really depends on if I remain successful, because a career is built on success and learning things, and then people go, wow, you've done well, I'd like to learn how you did it. But if you just drive it straight into the ground, no one wants to know anymore, right? Like, not too often be like, tell us how you drove it into the ground, even though that's some of the best knowledge you can ever get a hold of. Is watching someone fail is the best way to try and avoid failing. Yes. So John's watching on a 4K TV, and it's very pixelated versus normal. Yeah, there's a bunch of things to this, I would say as well. There's like, in the studio I could go out to, right? I'd have to go to my other building, insane amounts of equipment and all that, and it would be a lot better. But there's like the barrier of entry, and then also like the fun of trying new things. And so if I had to go set up out there and do everything, I probably just wouldn't do the stream. I'm really trying to get more, more just like, it was super easy, it worked well, I can change things about it. Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. Is this is not the highest end stream for sure, but it would be a lot easier to share my screen and do some other things, and use different graphics. But I'm not convinced either, right? I could, part of it would be, I bet if I upgraded my camera, that's going to solve a lot. Part of me is like, but the minute you start upgrading this, you're going to upgrade this. That being said, like this microphone, I already bought a $350 microphone specifically for the stream. So I have a hard time not going, this thing that is supposed to be just for fun. It's like, well, I'm tired of sounding like I'm in the cockpit of an airplane talking to people. I think Corey is an incredible mind that gets the rest of us thinking, but I want to pick Dorkula's brain. In my house, I am the head, but the lady is the neck, and that always turns the head. Yeah, I don't know if that's true in our house. She is, I mean, definitely supports me in like every way. So much so that she's, making sure I eat. She's making sure that vehicles have gas. She's taking care of our dog. She does so much to support, so that, imagine that you had a partner in crime and they understand that their job is basically to eliminate everything that isn't working on the business, which allows me, when I say like, oh yeah, I'm working 12 or 14 hours, it's legit 12 or 14 hours in spreadsheets, in video, in like at a desk doing it. Not even like, like maybe you go to work, right? And you're like, well, I took 30 minutes off for lunch. Like that doesn't happen, right? So it'll be so much so that her schedule revolves around, okay, you've got a gap at 12 to 12:30. I'll make sure you have lunch ready because you're in the next meeting for a few hours at that time. And then you're going to have a live stream later in the day because it's Tuesday, and that's going to start at 5 and go till 7. Do you want dinner right before you go live, or do you want dinner right at 7 when you're done? All of these things, she is, making so many things happen behind the scenes that they're all things that people have to do day in, day out that jam up time. And that allows me to just be plugged into this machine nonstop, trying to push it forward. So, she should have very different perspectives on a lot of these things. And, some of her job is just recognizing when I'm crazy stressed, like what's going on, is it an HR issue? Is it a money issue? Is it a YouTube issue? Is it, like what, there's always something crazy going on. And, making sure that like, what, maybe we should just, watch a movie tonight. Like, what, you're right. We should just watch a movie. And her job is to force me to take vacations and do those things that I don't do, which I super value. But when you're in the machine all the time, you're only just moving forward, and you don't realize like, oh no, sometimes you got to swap out a part. And that's what I don't do. I just go, yeah, I got to keep going. And she definitely, supported us when we launched the business at the beginning. She was by far the breadwinner and all of that. And I want to say I don't even know if it was the first year. It might have been the second year. I don't think I paid myself anything the first year. I think the second year, it was roughly $500 a month was my paycheck. And so I think the second year the business was open, my tax return said I made $14,000, which in Washington State is not enough to live. We were definitely basically all on her income to make that work. And it literally was a life of spending up to $3 at like McDonald's or something on the value menu. And then, or supplementing with like cup of noodles, like behind the store, eating and not taking a lunch because I was the only employee. At the time we were open from noon to 8. And you couldn't leave, right? You can't just like, I guess you can. I never would though. Like that's just terrible business of like, let me put up a sign, close my store down for an hour while I go find something to eat. Like can't have that. So. What's my picture on my chimney here? Let me grab it. You'll have to see that I'm not wearing any socks. By the way, you want to be as comfortable as you can be when you work nonstop. So that's why I wear sweatpants, and they're cheap. This is something that I had done. This cost like $300, which I told myself I would never buy these when I was winning them earlier in my career. And now that I can I get to write them off as a business expense because, well, now that I get to talk about it, it's marketing, right? And there'll probably be in some videos at some point, but this right here is Pet Product News International. We won Retailer of the Year in 2021. So what's cool about that is it's not just aquatics; it's all pet industry. Let me take this off so you can see it. But yeah, right there. So you can see article written up about us, and I think in 20. Yeah, so this is okay. So it is aquatics retailer actually. So I'm a big fat liar. 2021 to 2022 year we won, and then I think in 2019 we were best customer service. I think is what we won. But this I basically want to. If I'm being honest, I just want to have stuff on the wall that's like reminds me of like, I don't know, success, like a rapper or something, like, oh, they get platinum records or something. And part of it is I've started to forget some of the milestones we've done. Like I've got awards in my other office where, what was it? I was top 40 under 40 in one of the pet magazines. So there's different stuff that we win, and we don't really share it a whole lot with our main business because I don't know that I don't know. It comes off as braggy a lot, and so I try not to Or the other thing with social media these days is you post about like how you're retailer of the year or something, and then like the 22 people out of 180,000 people that purchase from you are like, no, you're not. You're terrible. I hate your guts. I wish you would die. And so those 22 people, and then you've got the people that do like you. Now they're fighting back and forth. And you're having to ban people and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, this was Pet Product News International, sponsored by the WPA, which is the World Pet Association, and yeah, I'm thinking about having some other ones done. I'm just going to hang them on the stairs, I think, to get here, or the chimney. I thought about that too. But yeah, it's just, what was it? It's probably like a 1.5 page article or something. And they do print magazines, but almost everything's online now. So it's like, yeah, they probably printed a few thousand of the magazines and sent them out to different people, but it's mostly an online thing. And I guess I want to start commemorating more stuff, because as time goes on, we're like in year 9 now. Like I forget, like, oh yeah, remember when I was on YouTube and I spoke at VidCon about like memberships and all that. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that and I did this and I did this. And so if I start at least having something as a memento, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a good talking point, or any of that kind of stuff. So that's what this thing is. It just sits back there, and I haven't mounted it or anything yet, because that takes time away from working. So I have to, and plus I'd have to like get a masonry bid and actually hang it. So I'm thinking I'm going to hang it on some wood wall or something. Let me put that back. Oh, my screen just turned off. That's good. Okay, it's back. Okay, where'd my mouse go? It's back. Okay, we're good. You'd brag if you're featured in a magazine. Yeah, we probably get it like maybe twice a year. Like different stuff. The problem is, unfortunately, in the world we live in today, there's enough people that want to tear you down that it's kind of easier to just it's kind of easier just to sail on. Like, it's a weird thing in business right now. You kind of just want no waves. You're just like, yeah, people are buying and we're doing our thing and everything's going great. The last thing I need is a speed bump. And like, so you kind of try to not rock the boat. And so, so much so that for years I was scared to show that like I owned a Rolex, right? I really had wanted one for many years, that kind of stuff. But like, are people going to assume that I only do this for the money and things like that? And yeah. And so, but when I finally did, I was like, okay, I kind of went okay. We still get that where people are like, you only do it for the money. And they don't realize that like well, not all my employees, but like the higher up people in my company will see how much money I don't take for myself and my business partner. When you give away $20,000 in t-shirts that you don't have to, like, that 100% is just money that was going to go to my pocket. I would have gotten 75% of that. But we do okay, so that's fine. And I'm investing in future, and hopefully, as long as I don't screw this thing up, it'll make us more money in the long term. And it's not always about making money. Sometimes it's about just getting someone who's really into the hobby a free shirt, and that's cool. But yeah, it's a weird thing you got to manage, being on so much social media. You can't do anything. Well, you don't have to announce things. Like every day, someone will be like writing us a letter on how I'm going to die from Diet Coke or whatever I'm doing. It doesn't matter what you do. Whether you're doing it right or wrong, someone's got a tip for you. And so the less stimuli you can kind of plug into those marketing avenues, kind of the more expected the results are, basically. So, if I brag a lot about how we're the best retailer ever, we might start getting worse reviews of like, thought you were the best, weren't the best this time, I stubbed my toe in your store, or whatever. Like, we've seen that kind of crazy stuff happen when you get backlash. So it's it's just kind of for us. When I started out, did people ever ask how your company was doing? If so, how'd you respond? So first starting out, I would always, my big thing has always been be as honest as I can. Sometimes you can't be honest. Like, if I make $100,000 in a month, that doesn't go over very well. I'm like, yeah, I made $100,000. It was Christmas, right? Because that'll be the talking point, and it won't be the talking point when it's like, yeah, summer. No one was like, there was a summer in year 3, right, where we were open the whole month and we lost money. So like that was back when we weren't making very much money at all. Like, and we were still doing okay sales, right? So like the average month we'd sell like $30,000 worth of stuff. That month though, Washington State got less rain than the Sahara Desert. So it was beautiful outside, right? And we weren't online yet at that point. And so we only made about $12,000 worth of sales. And being that was over a 50% drop in revenue, we had employees and we had all that. And so basically, I had to work really hard that month, like I always had. And we had lost, I basically paid $2,000 to work really hard. I didn't get paid. I paid $2,000, right? And obviously, that same year, I didn't make $100,000 in December. That would have been more like we did like $37,000 in December, right? And so that might mean that in a perfect world in that December, we profited, let's say $5,000, but in that July, we lost $2,000. So like we're up $3,000 though. And actually in those first few years where I wasn't online, that's when I started getting into YouTube and everything, because for the first 3 years, I think at the end of year 3, I had only made $40,000. So I'm working 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, and I make $40,000. Meanwhile, my wife was also working like 10-hour days because she had a long commute, but she was making more than that. Not like a crazy amount more, but she only worked 5 days a week. And so it was kind of one of those like, this is not good. I'm working longer and more days to make less money. Maybe I should, well, I wasn't really thinking, I was thinking that I have to do better. Otherwise, I should just do some other job because it's a better time or better return on your time. And so that got me into YouTube, and then YouTube started the online business, and the whole time I'm learning about all these things. And that's how I know what I talk about today is based on experience. And every day though, I learn more and more, which is amazing, because usually if you get to control your business, if you learn more, that probably means you get to make some more money. Not always though. Sometimes you're learning like, oh, didn't realize that was a law, and okay, we'll make sure we don't, ruin or break that law again. Then they'll say, quit your complaining. You can't win either way. I mean, that's kind of that. The internet as an aggregate is that, because so imagine you got 1,000 people, right? You're going to have 100 people say, good for you. And then you're going to have 100 people say like, how dare you? And then you're going to have 800 in between that kind of fall on both sides. And so no matter what you do, short of like really heinous acts, you're always making someone happy, someone sad, someone neutral. And the more times you kind of do repetitive stuff, the more you can know what the result is. And so adding in outside influences makes things harder. And so usually not trying to make things harder. $20,000 in shirts are walking billboards when people wear them. 100%. That is exactly why we do it for the most part. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is a good feeling when you've got a kid who really wanted a shirt for a long time, but they've been spending their money on buying supplies for their aquarium. That is a feel-good feeling. But then you've got the most of it where, okay, if half of these shirts are actually worn around, they're advertising for us, that's good. That's also why we do really high quality, good shirts, so that you don't just get it and be like, oh, it's peeling or oh, it's crappy. We actually want them to be worn. And that's also my philosophy of don't give away something that doesn't make it back. So I go to a lot of trade shows, part of my job. And there's a lot of free samples. And when I have to fly back, you're leaving so much in the hotel room. It's like, I don't have room. And like, no, that thing's not even that good. No, that's just, I'm not going to use that sample when you're making room. And I always want to make sure that my stuff that we're giving away makes the cut. of like, oh, that can go that. Oh, but this, nope, we got to get this. And I got to stuff that a little harder, make sure that comes back with me. So everything I do, I try to be practical and go, is this smart investing or is this just keeping up with the Joneses? And so, but yeah, it definitely is an investment, and that's why it gets to be a business expense as well. If it wasn't, I wouldn't get to claim it. There'd be tax implications and all of that. But yes, it is definitely, a lot of businesses will spend, well, even us, will spend, like this month, I'll spend $30,000 in online ads, basically. And most businesses, like where did I see that? I saw a poll, and a lot of businesses were spending like 30 to 60% of all the income they made on advertising. And in that scenario, you can buy your customers a lot of cool stuff or give them a lot of cool stuff. And instead, they're giving it to Facebook and Google and things like that. But you could really, I think you can make waves in just being like, hey, check this out. I'm going to give this to you. Would you like to buy from me in the future? Instead of like, I'm going to show my ad to you 73 times the next month and maybe you'll buy from me. I was wearing my Aquarium Co-op hoodie last week while getting my truck refied. Dude said, I've been there and I fed that fish. Yeah. Speaking of the hoodies, so I bought like a stupid expensive hoodie. I bought like another jacket lately, and I still come back to our hoodie. I love our hoodie because I tested so many hoodies when we were having hoodies made that I still wear a hoodie, my own hoodie, like 98% of the time. And most people would think it's legit because, of course, you're going to represent your brand. Most times I'm trying to be incognito, actually. So I actually do it because it's just the most comfortable hoodie that I've had the pleasure of wearing so far. And they're expensive. And what I mean, we something like $45, I think. They cost me $32 to be made. It was just crazy. Actually, it's more now. It's actually more now. Let's see. Want to show your Aquashella t-shirt is paying off. I've seen six different people wearing co-op shirts in Pasco and Tampa, Florida. So 12 total that has been seen by 60 people per meeting. Awesome. That's what I love to hear. How I knew they were working is when I would see them 2 or 3 years later at another event and they would wear it to that event. That is a very long life cycle for like a promotional item. So I've got quite a bit. Quite a bit of other ideas. I want to give stuff away and make some cool things, but we'll see as time and resources allow. It's mostly a time thing right now because a lot of them aren't that expensive. But I want to make something really special for when someone meets me in person, not at an event. So that's another one of my wife's jobs. We were talking about that just the other day. So I'm filming a video there's a desktop aquarium right here for my main channel. And I was recognized at Petco while I was buying it because I wanted to buy this specific tank just so I could talk about it and the pros and cons and all that. Anyway, I'm always so disappointed when I meet people in person because my brain is so in the business and like transactional, like I'm buying this thing. Oh yeah, don't forget to, I want to talk about that when I'm filming the video. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, are you Corey from Aquarium Co-op? And I'm like, yeah. And then they like made a joke about like, oh, it's like we should take a selfie. And it just like goes over my head. I'm just like, paying, and then so I sit down in the car. I'm like, wait, that guy might've been serious about taking a selfie. Oh no, now I feel like a douchebag. And so my wife now is taking it upon herself to facilitate that because she'll tune into it and be like, oh yeah, I'll totally do it. Cause I would, I'm not that guy. Of course I would. But my brain is running so fast and I'm in my own little world most of the time that I don't put myself in that mode of like, oh, whereas like a convention, I know I'm dedicated to it. Yep. That's what we're doing. No problem. But when people recognize me, as I call it, out in the wild, I'm not in that mode. So when I got back in the car, I'm like, I really need to figure out a better interaction to have with people that kind of stumble upon me and I'm not in that mode. Cause I might be in the middle of like, I need this loaf of bread at the grocery store, or I'm doing this thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? This is brain catching up. And so now she's going to step in and be like, get a picture together, facilitate all that to make it easier for me, which I very much welcome. Yeah, Candy doesn't have a shirt yet. I forgot to give one to Bob. Bob, a friend of mine, has a YouTube channel. He was over on Friday, and I have them at my house because they finally. So we got all these shirts. We bought 3,000 of them. We gave away over 1,800 of them. Then we loaded up 10 of each size in a suitcase that I could carry back to Washington with us to give one to all of our employees. And the remainder of the sizes came back to my house finally a couple weeks later. And I meant to give one to Bob, and Candy hasn't gotten one yet. I have no idea what the sizes are, by the way. So for all I know, there's all smalls or all big sizes, but I'll try to set one aside for you if I remember. Otherwise, all the rest of our shirts were shipped to Texas for the next show, and we're not ordering more until it's closer to the show. So we'll get you one eventually. Yeah, we don't sell. So that's another thing we do with our swag items. We don't sell them, so that way they're special. Because I think there's something to that. I think it's like you will know if you have that shirt and you see someone else wearing that shirt that they've been to a show or met me or whatever. And that's where I want like a super. I've got this thing in mind that I want to be the super special item that I hand to people, like at that Petco interaction of like, hey, sweet, yep, and this is for you. Sell it on eBay, do whatever you want. Like this thing, not very many people are ever going to get, so enjoy. Smurfy's new tank on the stand. No, so we've got a large aquarium going to our retail store. It's roughly, they're still totaling it up, but because parts kind of kept changing in price over COVID and everything, but it's roughly $30,000 for this aquarium, and it should be it's getting installed while I'm not in the state even, so it's going to be next weekend, and so hopefully it all goes well. I think I'm actually hiring someone to oversee it in my stead because I have to be in an event. And that's what I think that might be the biggest example of what people won't understand, of like a $30,000 thing in the expansion of my retail store will be done on a weekend that I'm not even in the state that I'm paying for it. And I'm going to pay someone else to oversee it. So hopefully it will go well and be in the spot that I need it and foresee any problems that I would have seen. Because there's always that like, oh, actually, I didn't think about this. Let's have it be 3 more inches this way. But that, so that I can go be in another place and meet and greet fans, like the business still moves on. There's still going to be a whole warehouse of people working. There's going to be a whole retail store working. There's going to be people at the expansion working. There's going to be our social media team working at the event. We're going to try to live stream it. So all of these things are going in tandem all the time. And so, yeah, I'm a little nervous about that. Because I've always been with these big installs, I've always been kind of there for it. So hopefully it'll go good because it's a 1,450 gallon tank. Why is the video quality so terrible? Because I'm bad at my job and it's poor lighting. 1999-88 internet, nice. There, it got better. I don't know. I don't know if that was like a throttling thing, if my internet, is like geeking out, or if it was like maybe no, I don't think it was a focus thing. I don't know. You see how like we moved this picture though, and now there's this horrible glare. The glare was a lot less. So that's stuff like that I have to worry about all the time. Like probably today or tomorrow, either tonight or tomorrow, I'll spend time on camera moving that to fix the reflection. I wish I had like a normal internet provider here. I had to pay $10,000 to get fiber run. That was the first place to get fiber that wasn't like a crazy big business here, and it cost me $500 a month. I like having the space and the land, but having much more reliable internet was kind of nice. So, and that's part of the game I got to play too, of like testing. Like I have the ability to live stream in 4K, and I used to, and now it's like, well, is this going to, is this going to hold up? Do you ever still miss being small? Those wee years of not taking a paycheck. I don't miss being poor. I don't miss that. I do miss not being recognizable, like just being a worker. So like, and there was probably some sweet spots like where we were doing pretty okay online, and I could be recognized at like a show, but not recognized out in the wild. That was probably about a sweet spot. Like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm making like 100, well, maybe like 75,000 or $100,000 a year at that point. Um, that was pretty nice. Like you're not poor, like, right? But you also don't have the do I go into the grocery store? Do I have time for that today? Like, am I gonna get recognized, or can Katie just go do that? So yeah, that I do miss that part. I really miss being able to work with people one on one in the store, and it was just me and someone's problem, not, oh my gosh, it's a Corey from Aquarium Co-op. Can we get a selfie? Can we do this and that and that? Because that gets old for me. Doing just that, where I am a problem solver, and I really do like. I really do like going. How are we going to fix that? I've never encountered that before. Let's learn together. That part still engages my brain. I like that. So this is a quote I don't remember, but I probably said it. I remember you saying that you would spend $1,000. Okay, I thought it was $10,000. I was like, I don't remember saying 10,000. Saying I'd spend $1,000 to satisfy a disgruntled customer. Is that still the case? Yes. If anybody can attest to that, it's Candy. The amount of money that we end up giving away to just, I'm going to say, make it right for the customer. Even if we're in the right, we're willing to basically buy. This is going to sound wrong. Buy a good review? No, buy our way out of a bad review preemptively, right? So maybe the customer thinks that we're terrible at our jobs, we've done a horrible wrong. We'll just refund all the money basically and take a giant beating. And then usually that doesn't lead to us getting terrible reviews. It might lead to like we get a 3-star review. And I still think that's some of the best money, especially if you're a company that's spending a few $100,000 a month, which we're not, but like on Facebook ads and all of that, the amount of damage that's caused by a couple of bad reviews. And if you could refund money and get your way out of that for like $1,000, that's some of the best marketing money you can spend. Now that being said, we don't let people just straight up take advantage of us, and we will fire a customer and all of that. But if there's any, if the best outcome is like we need to part ways, it would have been best if we had never met this person. We take a $200 loss here, but we can get out of it and move on. Let's do that, right? And so we will do that. And there's probably times we've spent more than $1,000, and probably would, especially like in not a brand deal, but like a manufacturer. Maybe we'll just go, screw it. We're just not gonna. We don't want to we don't want to represent your brand anymore, and so we just won't sell it, and we'll give the product away, and we'll move on. So the hoodie you have on your hood on is 45 bucks on the store. I think so. I think it's maybe 47 if it's my size, because I'm like a 3X. Let me see. You would think I would memorize all this, but the prices, like in my mind, this thing's still $25, like when I first made them. But due to everything going up over the last 8 years, now it's like, I think it's 45. Let's see if I'm right. I could be wrong. Oh, they're only $39.99. Hey. And so the 3XL that I would wear is $49.99, where 2XL is $44.99, and XL and smaller is $39.99. So there you go. Kind of right and wrong all at the same time. Where did that screen go? I gotta close half these pages. I've got like tax forms open. How big of a slice of the co-op business pie does your blog account for? Do you find it's worth the time and effort? That's a really hard one to quantify. So from the data that we have, it's not worth it. That being said, in every type of marketing, there is basically unrealized gains that you can't quantify. So for instance, um, you might read one of our blog articles 5 times, right? Or five different blog articles because you Google search, you find us, and then 7 months later you buy from us. No model is ever going to be able to go, yeah, see, the blog article made you that $130 purchase, right? And that happens all the time with Facebook and Google. Like they call it the attribution or attribution. Why can't my brain's too many words for too long today? Attribute, but what is attribute in motion? Attribution? Anyway, they can't attribute the sale for anything longer than usually about a 30-day window is the max. And so there are lots of people that want to familiarize themselves with a brand for much longer than 30 days before they become a buyer. And so part of that problem is you might spend a bunch of money, not get any leads, but then they buy later. Especially higher ticket items are that way. Whereas like, cheaper things are usually easier. Like, hey, just buy this shirt. If I serve you enough ads, I might sway you. But if it's a big purchase, it's going to take a long time and a lot of advertising to get you there. And blog articles are kind of that thing. We have skilled people writing them, and so it costs us a lot. That being said, also something like a blog article doesn't even really bloom for like 2 years. So it means you make that, and it's got to work its way up in search engines and all of that. And after about a couple of years, if you've done everything right, then it's really high in the search engines, and that's where it starts paying you back the dividends. So, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to say, and some of those things are definitely going to be it's a faith thing. You gotta, and I do it because none of my competitors do it. If you were to survey like my top 10 competitors, they all start a blog and they all quit within like 6 months because it's a lot of work, and to do it well is really hard. And so usually when I watch someone quit because something's hard, I go, can we pull this off? And if we can, that's where we're going to get ahead, right? Because if we can do this like they do it, we can do this like they do it, and they're doing like we're all doing this the same, but we can push forward in an area they're not. Usually that's going to lead to some long-term gains over your competitor, right? Let's see. So fire a customer. Never heard of that phrase. It's a good one to be aware of, though. It actually happens all of the time in e-commerce. You just aren't aware of it. And so the first thing that will happen a lot of times, if you're having negative interactions with a brand, they're going to flag your account so that you won't get offers, right? So if you're known to be a trouble customer and just kind of a pain in the butt, let's not incentivize them to shop with us. So don't send them coupons. Don't tell them about the latest, greatest product. Don't give them 50% off, because in general, they're clogging up customer service. And so they might cost us $50 in customer service, but they're only buying $20 worth of stuff. And in common culture, we basically call that a Karen. Don't be a Karen, right? You're making everyone's life terrible. You're clogging up the return line. You're doing all of these things, sometimes very justified, in which case you wouldn't be flagged. And sometimes this is a pattern here. Every Saturday you show up to return this pair of pants, and we need to flag your account so that we're not sending you coupons to get you in here to buy another pair of pants to jam this lineup, right? And it happens in places like Amazon, right? If you return way too many things, right, and they have a ratio, and that might be it's like a dollar ratio. And if you're returning 70% of everything you ever buy from them, eventually they're just going to close your account because you're costing them way too much money for what you spend. And they know that the average person, right? The average person might return 5 to 10% of everything they ever buy, right? As worst offenders. So, and we track all that kind of stuff too. And so when we see like, we get very few, returns and complaints and all of that. And there'll be some customers where it's like, you've had a complaint on 9 out of 11 orders and we just this last last month, I think we passed over 500,000 orders. And it's like over that data, it's mostly like 1 in 100 people have a problem. Like 1 in 100 orders would have a complaint. So for someone to have 9 out of 11 orders, we start really looking at it going, yeah, this is quite irregular. Is this just you have the craziest scenario ever, or are you the craziest scenario ever? And a lot of times that's where we would pay that $1,000 basically of, all right, well, refund their entire order, let them know that we're going to not do business with them anymore, and we wish them luck. That hopefully some other one of our competitors will be able to fulfill their needs better than we can, because we have a pattern of not being able to do right by you, and so we want to make sure that we kind of pay it back 110%. Wish you luck, and we move on to find people that we can work well with. And that happens all the time in restaurants and things where, basically you might make a pizza one way and you love deep dish, so you love that place. But then the next customer, they love thin crust, right? And so they're not loving your place. And so they should really go find a pizza place that does thin crust really well and not show up every Saturday and complain about how you don't make deep dish, right? The logical thing is, let's get you to a place that does that you will be happier, they'll be happier, and we'll be happier, because we don't have to hear you complain about something that we do really well for our clientele that like that, and you can go find what you need somewhere else. And the problem is sometimes we run into, but no one else is doing it. Like, well, great, but we still don't want you sitting here every day complaining about how our deep dish sucks because you like thin crust, even though we're the only pizza place in town. Like, that's just not good for any of us. Is there any way to get our merch in Australia? Not really. We shipped like one influencer one time, and then they try to do a group buy, and then we shut it down. We're like, this is getting out of control. Our goal is, though, to be shipping to Australia hopefully this year. That's the hope, and we, each week we get a little bit closer, and we're actually like an actual step happens, which is really good, and so it's looking more promising. But the problem is once. And that's what happens, right? Once you give in once, the next person goes, hey, I want that too. And then the next person, the next person, the next person. And we know it's not sustainable. And so we kind of just had to put the kibosh on and go, nope, we can't. Because it already went from this influencer now on to a group buy. And it's like, well, that's starting to get out of control. And we got to figure out the taxes and the tariffs. It's one thing when we just go, hey, we'll ship you a shirt and a hat, and you're an influencer. And that's just, it costs us $150 to ship it and do all that. That's fine. It's another thing when it's like, oh, we got to, figure this out for 28 people. And now they're complaining about shipping. And then this was in this, and they wanted a different size. Like, okay, that's not good for us. But so you can't use a freight forwarder, which is expensive, but that's what a lot of people will do is they'll order it to a freight forwarder, and then that freight forwarder reships it to a different country. That's another customer service nightmare, though, when that freight forwarder either steals it or it gets lost after the freight forwarder ships it. We have no way to help you. So sometimes as a customer, I just had to stop ordering from a business after a few times of being disappointed. No reason to continue to torture myself and allow myself to get angry. Yeah, and that's we try our best to not be the source of the problem. That being said, I'm sure that happens with our business. I don't know that any business could 100% eliminate that. Like maybe you can get to 99%. There's always going to be 1%. There's people that get angry that we won't ship FedEx, or we won't ship UPS, or we won't ship DHL, or we won't do something the way they like it. And they might be like, well, USPS is terrible in my state, but we can't change the way our warehouse operates to accommodate a minority of customers. I shouldn't say can't. It doesn't make financial sense to do that. We'd have to get a bigger warehouse. We'd have to change things. We'd have to change websites so you could choose which type of shipping. And people will say like, well, this company will do it. And I go, great, go buy from them. And they go, well, they don't do X, Y, and Z that you do. And I go, great. Yeah, we took our attention. We focused on that. And then we can't do that other thing yet. Maybe in 5 years we can. But at this stage of the company, we can't do this and that to the levels that we need to hopefully keep everybody satisfied. And I've definitely had, I tell people, and I do myself, shop with your wallet. If you're not if you reach out in good faith and they don't make it right, then don't buy from them anymore. And sometimes maybe they do have the best pizza in the world, and they burn it 1 out of 3 times, and you're willing to take that burden. And that's a situation where once you have a competitor in that field that can do what you do but better, you'll just go out of business. But until that happens, you're stuck. I almost never return anything, even when the store is at fault, because of the stress of doing it. So your return policy of make it right is really great. Yeah, and that stems from me. I so rarely return stuff. I basically look at when I order something, it's going to be a loss because I don't have the time to return it, and most places make it a hassle. Even Amazon, and people are like, Amazon's great, kind of. Like depending on what I order, like this book. This book was ordered on Amazon. If I needed to return it, which I don't, but if I did, I don't know how they would do it. What do you mean, Corey? Well, some products you buy, I can take, 10 miles down the road and hand it to a Kohl's, and they'll take it back and ship it for me. Some products, even in the same order, let's say I bought this and I bought these AirPod Pros, right? Right here. Maybe I bought these in the same order. They might go, oh, this one, take to Kohl's. This one, you got to take to UPS to ship back. Like that is a colossal pain in the butt that I would hate. And so that keeps me from buying more too. I go, what are the odds that I'm going to like that? If it doesn't work out, I don't want the hassle. I just won't buy it. So part of what we try and do is, our official policy in our business is if we make any mistake, we're going to make it right and we're not going to penalize you. So we ship you something and it arrived broken. Great. Take a picture. We're sending one out today. Sorry about that. If you order something though, and you don't like it for a reason that is reasonable, like, you bought a shirt or you bought a hoodie from us that doesn't fit. We've had people where they went to order, they ordered a small and they needed a 3XL. And now we're kind of like, well, like, that's just your mistake. If you ship it back to us, we'll refund you the money or we'll send you the right one, but like, we're not going to pay you to send it back. And vice versa, like things on like lights and other stuff. Like imagine what's something in an industry that you can't wait for. Like a battery on your car, right? If you got a bad battery and it died 3 days later after you buying it brand new, you don't want to hear that the return process is a 2-week thing, right? So you're like, oh, I can't use my car for 2 weeks while you get me a new battery through the RMA process. You're just going to go, oh, hell no, that ain't happening. You'll go buy another battery. You'll swear off that place forever, right? And so in that instance, what we do, like a light or a heater or something, we go take a picture or something that proves. So in a battery, if we were to sell these big batteries, which we don't, but if we did, we'd be like, hook up a battery tester, take a picture of it and show me that it doesn't work. Great, doesn't work. I've got a truck on the way right now to bring it out, or I'm shipping one right now. Would move as fast as we can when we're at fault in any form. When the customer is at fault, a wrong size, or I just don't like it, right? Then it's like, as long as you get it back to us, we'll refund all of your money outside of the shipping, right? Because there's a lot of people that will go, well, let me just order one of everything, and then I'll return what I don't like. And throw back to earlier in the show, if your profit margins are running at like 10%, and all of a sudden you're paying the shipping on both ends, you're going, oh, I'm at negative 30% on this customer. And that just ends up losing you a ton of money. And if you allow that behavior to keep recurring, it's very detrimental to the business. And so we lose out on sales for sure. So kind of like that, the Rolex business at the beginning, no returns at all. You're going to lose some business from that for sure. But you also get protected of not losing that $200 fee. Same thing. If you return it to us, you spent $200 and we have a 2% fee. It's actually more than 2%, by the way. It's 2.5%, but 2% is easy math. You spend $200, right? 2% of that is $4, right? Is that right? Yeah, 10% would be 20. 1/5 of that is $4. Yeah, $4. That's not a huge amount, right? But you lose that $4. You lost the shipping. The shipping was probably $20 shipped to you, so we're out $24. And then I've got a bunch of open products we can't sell new anymore that we have to discount at 15%, right? So that's $15 plus $4 is $19 plus $20 in shipping. We're out $39 plus the wage we had to pay to customer service, plus the wage we had to pay to the inventory specialist that checked it back in and made sure that it actually showed up. So we're out roughly $50 the minute someone starts a return with our company. Basically, it's actually about $40 and some change, but the amount of people that have to get involved with the return and the amount of money we'll lose and the discounting and the relisting on a website and all of those people that get involved, the minute return starts, we're out 40 some dollars. So it's really bad when it's like, I'd like to return this pencil for $1. It's like, oh, we're going to take a $39 beating on this essentially. But in the aggregate, it works out. So that's the good news is, enough people buy without returning, and it works out so that we don't go out of business. All right. I want to call it here because it's already been 2 hours and 21 minutes. It's after 10 o'clock. I haven't checked my email in a while, and doesn't make sense to stream all night. So that way I can listen back to some of the playback, look at some of the video issues and those things, and I'll get to tweak it for the next time we do something. So, yeah. If you guys are local to Twin Cities, I'll be there next weekend. I don't know if I'll fit anything in this weekend because whenever I travel, it scrunches everything else up into very few days, and it makes it so that there's not extra time. And this kind of stuff is that extra time. So might be a couple of weeks before I'm back in the saddle up here after I've made tweaks and that kind of stuff. So hopefully you guys have a good couple of weeks. Hopefully your businesses or whatever you're doing is going okay. And leave some comments down below, maybe stuff you want to talk about, and I'll try to address them in future shows. So I'm gonna hit this end screen. I think technically, let me see, I could try another thing, right? There should be I don't know if it exists yet, but there used to be a button that could be like, the show is ending. I guess I have to make my own version of that. I can put flowers on the screen, or what's this thing? Whatever. Oh, and a UFO. All right. Or what's this? More flowers and ice cream. So yeah, lots of that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's any, just choose nothing. I don't know if I can get that off the screen anymore. All right. Well, I will see you guys some other time. Thanks for hanging out. Leave comments down below and hit that like and subscribe button or whatever. Might help. I don't know if I need the help though. Anyway, see you guys later.